and drop bombs like Hiroshima.
Somebody said, look at LeakYou video. What the fuck is LeakYou? Is it like a site? What's LeakYou? LeakYou. Is it a YouTube channel? Oh, shit. Oh, all right, bet. Here we go.
Please hit the like. Thank you.
One, two, three, four.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I hope you're having a fantastic Thursday. Coming through for a little blog, real quick, a little vlog. Some of you may have heard the story. Some of you may have not. Before I begin, shout out to Linda Moulton Howe over at Earthfile. You can locate her website at earthfiles.com. But more importantly, she has a Wednesday night broadcast. Every Wednesday night, 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, 9:30 Eastern. If you haven't had a chance to catch one of her weekly streams, well, I don't know what you're waiting on. We are going to be talking about a black pyramid that is 550 feet tall, larger than the Giza pyramid, which is currently in the remote Alaskan wilderness. The remote Alaskan wilderness. So let's get right on into it. Allow me just a moment here. Un momento. All right. All right. So, first, before we even get started, let me shout out to those of you in the chat. Shout out to the J. Lee Chronicles. Definitely go out there, go over to J. Lee Chronicles, subscribe to his channel. He provides great content on a variety of different topics, and you will not be disappointed. Shout out to the one and only Third Eye, our resident ringmaster for Interloper Nation. He is also in the building. And of course, my lovely, lovely friend, Rolla Mile Investigates, also known as Rami. She's been pumping out content like crazy, true crime content. And she has been covering some very good stories. So when you get an opportunity, definitely go out and go over to her channel, check her out. Also, I encourage each and every one of you to follow my podcast platform at anchor.fm/LeakYou. You will find me on Spotify, Amazon, Apple, and Google Podcasts. You can also support my work on the Facebook platform by sending me a star, which is a digital gift that allows me to earn money, which is poured right back into this platform and the LeakYou community so that I can continue to bring you phenomenal content. I do thank each of you for your support. I really do. Now, let's jump into this. So, there has been rumors of a black pyramid that is larger than the Giza structures that is hidden beneath Alaska. This is a claim made by a U.S. official. Agent Doug Mutchler claims to have uncovered a huge subterranean pyramid buried in an enclave in Alaska. This pyramid is larger than the one in Giza, and that our government is hiding this find. Deep underground in the Alaskan wilderness lies this ginormous black pyramid, which has been concealed by a top secret government facility. Ex-counterintelligence agent Doug Mutchler never intended to stumble upon this spooky tomb, but in September of 1989, this espionage and terrorism specialist was posted to Fort Richardson on the outskirts of Anchorage. And this changed his life forever. Now, the first thing that any agent would do is to find their bearings for their area of operation. And since this was decades ago, Google and AI and all of those wonderful things were not around to help. So Doug pulled out an old school map and he noticed there was a whited out enclave in the mountains which had not been filled in. And his suspicions were immediately raised. He says that he was putting the maps out and that there was one area that was whited out, which was inscribed with, quote, "This area not surveyed to date," end quote. Now, this is something that he did reveal in a video on the Quest YouTube channel. And with his counterintelligence background, he knew in his heart that they were hiding something. Now, life as an intelligence officer meant that you worked on a need-to-know basis. So Doug quickly let his suspicions slide. So we fast forward from 1989 to 1992, and China had just set off its biggest ever underground nuclear explosion, which was 70 times the explosive power of the atomic bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima. Shockwaves were reportedly felt as far as Alaska. and picked up by earthquake analyzing equipment. And a local TV news station even reported on this eerie find. They claimed that a giant subterranean pyramid had shown up on their equipment. The agent recalled the news anchor reporting, quote, "In Alaska, a pyramid was found larger than the one in Giza, eclipsing it by almost 70 feet. Its position correlated exactly with the whited out area on that map that we spoke about earlier." The next evening, the agent waited eagerly for a follow-up report, but it never came. Baffled at the radio silence, Doug headed down to grab a copy of the report at a local station. That station manager allegedly denied that the story was ever even put out. Meanwhile, a junior reporter overheard this conversation and anxiously pulled Doug aside. Doug says that two guys came in and took the tapes, which meant one thing: they were burying this report. A year passed with the events still whirling around Doug's mind when in 1993, he made the pilgrimage to Fort Meade, Maryland, the home of an extensive collection of military records. The archivist at the facility noted the case and led him to where these redacted documents were situated. Doug went into that second drawer and he saw a folder titled Alaska. He took it out, didn't know what it was and didn't know what it contained, but he brought it back, he sat down, and moments later, two conspicuous looking guys come over and say, "You are not authorized to have that," before grabbing the papers of the cloak and dagger operation. Doug deemed that his journey to the truth had come to an end. All the while, his hunch remained. Almost 2 decades later, 20 years, Doug reached out for help from Emmy Award-winning documentarian and investigative journalist Linda Moulton Howe. She is renowned for her work as a ufologist and an advocate of a number of conspiracy theories which have swept America. Linda picked up the phone and began calling anybody who might know something about this giant pyramid and who could substantiate Doug's wild claims. Hope was beginning to dwindle until Linda was contacted by an anonymous figure. Quote, "I get a call from somebody on the East Coast about how there was a huge pyramid underground in Alaska of such age that no one knows. He named it the Dark Pyramid and said it was made from solid black stone, standing a mammoth 550 feet from base to tip." The man's descriptions finally offered Doug a glimmer of evidence about this elusive pyramid that we've all been hearing about for years. However, despite the man's claims, this structure has never been found. It has never been found. Now, last night on the Earth Files broadcast, and I will drop a link to Linda Moulton Howe's broadcast last night. I'm going to throw a link here in the live chat. I've already put it in the description of this video. Linda Moulton Howe had a show. She had a show regarding this amazing find. And I'd like to just tap in just a little bit. Linda's been, Earth Files and Linda Moulton Howe and Ian, their whole team over there have been pretty amazing. And I've never had issue with, just showing a little bit of this. I don't show the whole thing, but I would like to just tap in just a little bit. And again, link is in the live chat. It is in the description of the video. I encourage you guys to please go and subscribe. Every Wednesday night, tune in, 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. Let's take a look, shall we? Let's take a look.
Of alien intelligences from beyond Earth that allegedly have been interacting with Earth life for millions of years. Just a couple of weeks ago, in the first week of 2024, this YouTube headline appeared on Discovery UK in Europe. Quote, "Government whistleblower exposes the Alaskan Black Pyramid, aliens in Alaska," close quote. Featured was a U.S. Army whistleblower, backlighted and voice altered, who revealed a classified message he received in 1983 about a huge all-black pyramid, bigger than Cheops in Egypt, buried deep underground between Nome and Mount Denali, Alaska.
His identity has been concealed for his own safety.
What I am about to tell you is classified on the highest level of security in our federal government. Telling you this could get me sent to Leavenworth for the rest of my life. During the height of the Cold War, I worked in a telecommunications center which delivered all of the high priority messages. It was not uncommon for most everybody in my office to have a top secret security clearance. And top secret is the highest one that anybody in the federal government can have.
One day, in 1983, he decoded a message that left him and his colleagues completely perplexed.
And we noticed the subject line on it was Alaskan Black Pyramid.
This is what I first reported at my earthfiles.com news website 12 years ago, back in July 2012, after being contacted by retired U.S. Army Chief Warrant Officer Douglas Muchler. He served at Fort Richardson in U.S. Army Intelligence in Anchorage. At first, when I tried to call him to record our interview, something or someone was blocking our phone connection. But we persisted. And here now is an interview segment from my interview with Doug Muchler that I first broadcast on July 26, 2012 at earthfiles.com and on Coast to Coast AM radio.
As a past intelligence operative and knowing how the government works, they're covering something. Something's up there, and somebody is hiding it.
Now let's go forward with the story that appears to be so sensitive that extra effort is being made to block us. So now, would you go back to our working counterintelligence as a warrant officer, CW2, and that you were in Anchorage, Alaska at Fort Richardson, and we are beginning this story in 1989?
I asked to go to Alaska as my first duty station as a warrant officer because my dad was stationed there and he loved the place. I went there, and when I arrived, one of the first things I did was go and get maps because I wanted to prospect. So I went to the GSA office and I picked up every map that made up Alaska. They were the Joint Operation Graphic Ground Maps, scale 1 to 250,000. And it covered the whole bedroom wall and the ceiling. I mean, these are really detailed maps. And I got to one of them that was on the western portion of the state, and it was whited out. There was a whole section about the size of a Christmas card. And it said, this area not surveyed as of this date. And the first thing I thought was, that's ridiculous. I mean, they've had the Earth mapped since like the 60s. And I know Alaska was mapped out right after World War II. But anyways, it didn't make sense to be whited out. They're hiding something. What I was into, counterintelligence, there's something there. But I had no need to know. Then I'm out processing, 1992. And we're sitting there. It was in late November, early December. And I'm sitting there in the orderly room with about 40 other people. And we were waiting for the last formation of the day. We're watching the TV, a news program was on. And they started talking about this Chinese detonation of an underground nuclear bomb that was set off earlier that year.
May 22nd, 1992.
And they were talking about that, how big it was. And then there was a byline. And the story was about geologists around the world had been informed through the UN because China had told the UN they were going to do this. And so these geologists got together and they said, let's get the best recordings of the Earth's crust and mantle using the vibrations from this explosion. And what they found in this byline story was under Alaska, they found a pyramid bigger than the one in Egypt. They said they didn't know whether it was solid or hollow. They couldn't tell that, but they had the distinct outline of a pyramid.
And this was supposed to be where?
That whited out area, the area that showed on the TV, were south of Mount McKinley, and it was towards the west, near the Nome area. There's an area there that was whited out, quite a large area, really. And when I saw the news program, I mean, it just in my mind's eye, I could see it just right where the whiteout area was. Well, I knew that the whole world has been surveyed. So why was this whited out? It don't make any sense. I was like, oh man, I got to get this tonight. So I went home and I got a recorder and set it up. No story. I called home, the lower 48, to my dad. And he religiously, my dad is a TV hound, especially a news hound, morning, noon, evening, and 11 o'clock. He watches them all. He heard nothing about it, not a thing. I mean, it's a big story, bigger than the one in Egypt, and it's not being covered in lower 48.
Meaning as if either there was some block on the story getting into the United States, or the story had been picked up only by the local Channel 13 station in Anchorage.
That's the only thing I could come up with myself. But the thing is, I went the next day to the station and asked if I could get a copy of that story. And I was talking to the general manager, asking for it. And he said, what story? We didn't run no story about no pyramid. And I was like, sure you did. There's 40 of us guys and they watched it on TV. And he denied it ever running. And I was just perplexed. Knowing what I know, I thought to myself, this guy's been got to. He's covering. I mean, it's the only thing that could be.
And what you mean is that the United States government, when push comes to shove, and the Department of Defense says that something is sensitive, they can interact with management in TV stations or networks and say, don't run that story.
They do it all the time.
Yes.
That's a matter of record. So I was walking out and there was a technician staring at me. And the way he acted, he's like, come here. And I walked over and I said, can you help me with this? He goes, man, we ran that, but I can't get it for you. It's gone. I can't help you. But it ran. I was mad. I went back to the office in formation that night. I told everybody what I'd found out, and the guys in the unit were like, wait a minute, we watched it. What do you mean they didn't run it? You know, the same thing I was saying. So I have tried to find that news program, and somebody out there has to have been recording their kid's ball game or wrestling match or something, you know, and they've got it. if somebody has it, I'd love to get it because I want to find out where those grid coordinates are.
What happened about a year later in 1993 when you went to Fort Meade?
Okay, I was going through a lot of operations during this period of time. I was a commander at Fort Leonard Wood of a small detachment. And when I was working on a book for doing background investigations, and then we had another thing that we were working on terrorism around that area. It was a thing we were working with the FBI. So part of my job was to go to Fort Meade, where they have storehouses of information. I'll just put it that way. I don't want to get into too much.
Everybody listening, and myself included, when they hear Fort Meade, they automatically think of the National Security Agency. Is that where you were?
No, and I don't want to get into the building or the organization. It's a building that is an SCI type of building, Special Compartmented Information. I don't want to get into the name of the building or who runs it, but it is a military thing. It's just a big warehouse where they have rows and rows and rows and rows of combination safes.
So it's an archive for highly classified sensitive material.
Right. I was looking for what I was looking for. And then when I was done, I thought maybe they have something about this pyramid. So I went to the librarian and I asked him if he had anything on archaeological sites. I didn't say pyramid, but I said archaeological sites or underground facilities in Alaska. He said, well, if we do, it might be in container X, Y, or Z. So I went over there, just looking around, and I really didn't find anything saying pyramid, but I grabbed a couple of Alaska, like 2 different safes. And I had just sat down, and these 2 guys came. You can feel someone standing behind you. And these 2 goons go, hey, you don't have a need to know for that information. And I turned around and said, what do you mean? And he was like, you don't have a need to know. You're going to have to leave. I said, well, I'm just looking. We know what you're looking for. And the other guy, somehow in that conversation, he goes, they don't want us messing with them up there anymore. They don't want you messing with them up there. They don't want anybody messing with them. And the guy who was standing with him, the bigger guy, his head just shot over and he looked at his partner. And you could tell he was just glaring at him. And I was like flustered because I was thinking, what did he just tell me? They don't want any of us messing with them anymore?
Up there, right? And up there,
yeah,
from where you were at Fort Meade in Maryland would certainly be up there.
Alaska, because the folder I had was Alaska.
As a result of that July 2012 broadcast on Coast Radio, 2 other sources contacted me regarding the Dark Pyramid in Alaska. One was the son of a man who had worked for Western Electric on the distant early warning system known as the Dew Line. That Western Electric employee had been flown to a secret location in Alaska with other Western Electric and Bell Lab employees to investigate the large pyramid found deep underground. The top of the Black Pyramid was 150 feet down from the surface, meaning you're walking around down here, go down 150 feet, and you would get to the very top point, vertex of the Black Pyramid. And then if you went from that vertex down to the bottom of the base of the big pyramid, you would be 700 feet down. That meant the Alaska Pyramid is 550 feet tall, and that's 68 feet higher than the Cheops Pyramid in Cairo, Egypt, that was originally 482 feet tall. The Black Pyramid was determined to be some type of a power generation system. The large Black Pyramid was so advanced that the engineers and scientists could not figure out how it worked. But they determined that it had the ability to, quote, power all of Alaska and Canada, close quote. Further, it was very ancient and was not created by humans. Another man who heard my July 2012 Coast to Coast AM broadcast about the underground Dark Pyramid in Alaska called and told me that his once military pilot father had secretly flown in a civilian Huey helicopter from Unalakleet, Alaska, to the underground pyramid site between Nome and Mount Denali. He said his father was told that the Black Pyramid was more secret than the Manhattan atomic bomb project in World War II. The father told his son that when the helicopter landed, it did not shut down. They were surrounded by jeeps with 50 caliber machine guns. There was barbed wire fenced enclosure with armed guard towers. Inside the enclosure were 2 mine shaft type elevators that went down to something deep underground. 6 men came forward to the Huey helicopter and offloaded 3 heavy metal equipment cases without saying a word. Then a Jeep with a fuel hose and fuel tank pulled up, and they hot fueled the Huey helicopter. When the fuel tanks were filled, the Huey took off and returned to Unalakleet. It was the son who contacted me at Earth Files. I am now working again with retired U.S. Navy Captain Mark Wood, who has helped me on the Dark Pyramid reports since 2012. In U.S. Navy Captain Mark Wood's 25-year career that included 4 years on active duty and 21 years assigned to 2 Naval Air Reserve squadrons, he accumulated approximately 3,000 hours in the P-3 Orion Maritime Patrol aircraft. And he made 14 overseas deployments as a P-3 tactical coordinator, mission commander, and squadron detachment officer in charge, with both the Atlantic and Pacific fleets. In this work that you have done now, where do you think the Dark Pyramid is underground and why?
Well, Linda, based on the witnesses that contacted you back in 2012, we've been able to put together some information on Google Earth Maps that give us an idea of where the Dark Pyramid may be located. First of all, we know that there was a Western Electric engineer with some Bell Labs people that flew from Omaha into Alaska, and they landed in the western part of the state at a town called Unalakleet. From there, they were put on a bus with the windows blacked out and drove approximately 4 hours to a location where they came to a very rudimentary runway that was packed ice and snow. And that is Caltag.
Caltag, okay.
They took them off the bus, and then they divided them into small groups and put them on small airplanes to fly to the east towards where the Dark Pyramid is located. My assumption is they were probably flying on de Havilland Beaver aircraft, single engines that would carry 7 to 8 people. The Army Air Force and the U.S. Air Force purchased over 900 of those over the years, and they were available beginning in 1948 after World War II. What was interesting about this Caltag is that some of the documents we saw indicated that its airport was built in the 1960s. Now, the Western Electric and Bell Labs people were there in 59 through 61, but it turns out when you look at a 1959 National Geographic map of Alaska, it shows that Caltag had an airport. So we know that Caltag was probably the location that they went to in the bus with the black windows. And then they got on an airplane, a small plane, and flew to the east. And the only thing that we knew of from the Western Electric engineer was that when they landed at this new airport, that it had a longer runway, and it was a runway long enough to probably handle cargo planes, which the airport at Caltag could not. So our job at that point began to look for an airport somewhere close to the 50-mile arc in Denali, and that is where our area of probability started. And what we found was, in that general vicinity, there were only 2 airports close to that Denali 50-mile arc that had long runways that could have been used by the Western Electric people. The first one was in a town called Nikolai, which was actually about 55 or 60 miles west of the Denali 50-mile arc. So the chances are that that was not where they were going. However, there was a town called Toledo that had a 2,000-foot runway, and we believe that that's where they were flying to. When we looked on the 1959 National Geographic map, however, it didn't show an airport at Toledo. So we started looking at a couple other sources, and we looked at the history of the town, and we looked at the FAA history of the airport, and lo and behold, there was a fire in that town in 1958, and the town history reported that it was near where they had built a runway. And so we know that the runway existed in 1958, which means that it was there in 1959 and 1961 when the Western Electric people left.
And it could have been that it was the discovery of the huge black pyramid underground in that Toledo area between McGrath and Toledo, that they found it. And then there was the challenge, how can we fly supplies in and out of here without the world finding out? And they may have even tried to camouflage that Toledo runway.
Well, it's very possible. The town back in that time period had no more than 30 people living there. And after that, it dropped to about 11 back around 2000. And today there are only about 3 people there. Now, explain to me, if you've got 30 people living in a town and you've probably got men and women living there, so maybe you've got 12 to 15 men living there. How did 12 to 15 men build a 2,000-foot long runway?
Yeah.
I don't think they did. The other thing that's interesting is some of the things I read about the airport. It's just a runway. It doesn't have a tower. It has a windsock that's lit up so you can tell what the wind is. And I think there are some radio frequencies that forward to Anchorage Center or to Fairbanks to let them know that you're going to land there. But it made the comment that if anybody is landing at Toledo, to be careful when you get midway down the runway, because the runway is not level or even due to heavy traffic. Now, explain to me, if you've got a town with 3 people living in it, why is there a lot of heavy air traffic going into that runway?
Right.
It doesn't make sense.
If the Dark Pyramid is 150 feet down to the vertex and it's in that area somewhere around where the Toledo airport is, how do you think we would ever find out when the pyramid might have been put there, but especially when did our government discover that it was there and that the secret has been ongoing now for decades?
Well, I think you have to look at the history of Alaska since 1941. And if this underground pyramid does what we hear that it can do, it's probably operating sort of similarly to what Nikola Tesla tried to do with the Warden Cliff Tower, where he was using power that he got from the earth and sending it to the ionosphere to go around the world and give free electricity to everybody.
Right.
So if this pyramid is generating electricity and sending the power into the atmosphere that goes around the world, then the chances are pretty good that there's some electromagnetic or EMI, electromagnetic interference in the vicinity, and that airplanes flying over it would have problems with their instrumentation, with their engine misfiring, things like that. And if it happens once, it's just no big deal. But if it happens every other time somebody flies over it, somebody's going to start asking questions. And I think that between the end of the war and the beginning of the Korean War, people were wondering what was going on in the vicinity of interior Alaska. And I think that that's somehow how they found it. The underground pyramid, if you'll remember, when the Huey helicopter was to drop off those 3 very heavy metal cases, they mentioned the fact that there was a C-130 flying above them. It was just sort of flying circles because they were flying faster than the Huey. And they were just keeping up with them, just following them as they went to where they were going to drop off this equipment. And then stayed circling, but they did know that they got close to the location, that their instruments would go haywire and that they would have electrical problems, but they were prepared for that. So I think that any type of a private airplane that was flying over where that pyramid is located would have issues.
Yeah.
And it would be interesting to see the numbers of people that have gone missing in Alaska, in the Alaska Triangle is just unbelievable. But there are also a large number of planes that have gone missing over the years. And to be curious to see, now that we sort of have a rough idea where we think this thing is located, how many planes basically gone missing over the area that the Huey having problems with their instrumentation.
What is your intuition about where exactly the Dark Pyramid might be in this map that has the Toledo airport and goes out to Caltag and includes McGrath? Where do you think?
I think if you look at what we know over the years in terms of bits and pieces, we have heard that the pyramid is within 50 miles of Denali.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that the Toledo airport is probably 30 miles outside that arc. So if we go ahead and we assume that when somebody says it's within 50 miles of Denali, that could be anywhere from 45 to 55, with 50 being in the middle. So if you take an arc that's now a belt, if you will, that's 45 miles to 55 miles, and you go maybe a little bit northwest of Denali, I think we've got a 80 to 90% probability that somewhere in that circle is where this thing exists.
If anyone listening tonight knows the exact latitude and longitude of this huge underground Black Pyramid in Alaska, please send me a secure digital proton mail or hard mail to me at Post Office Box 21843, Albuquerque, New Mexico 87154. And Ian is also going to gather comments from the live chat. And I thought I'd start with 3 comments that Ian already had organized from viewers, beginning with 1. I was stationed at Fort Richardson at the same time, meaning of Doug Muchler, and remember the story about the pyramid also, close quote. 2. In the year 1982, my husband Terry and I were bush pilots in Alaska. We knew about the underground ET-built Black Pyramid next to Mount Denali. We respected the 120-mile no-fly zone around the mountain, close quote. And a 3rd, quote, this is awesome. My dad was born in the very early 1940s. He talked about military operations, something very similar, but not quite as specific, except he would talk about the power of the pyramid, close quote. And now let's find out what questions and comments Ian has. Hi, Ian.
Hi, Linda. Great report. Thank you. It's great to have you and Prometheus and everyone with you tonight.
Yeah, it's fun. It's interesting. And I feel that this is a subject with this new release by the Army guy that there is more and more gathering, as Mark Wood does too, in this collaboration this time. He felt very strongly about saying the 80 to 90% probability of this dark pyramid being in that 50-mile circle from Mount Denali out. And this is the closest that we've had of a focus. And I am very interested in whether we can now get more information from people who know firsthand. And going from here, Ian, have you gotten anything tonight in comments and chat that is specifically related to what exactly is there?
Yes, people are responding straight away to our call about the pyramids, not necessarily just the pyramid in Alaska, although that seems to be the focus here, but pyramids elsewhere in Antarctica, perhaps, and on Mars and in other areas as well. But straight up, we've got a question from Pro Wrestler 91 who says, why do we get more military personnel coming forward with legitimate proof of UAPs, but never, it seems, this Black Pyramid or Antarctica's hidden alien base?
Well, it is a good question, but over the period of time that we first learned back when they were building the dew line, I would imagine that the non-disclosure agreements that military people and scientists who may have been called in working on this, that they were really stiff and that no one was going to violate their non-disclosure. Later, when you get to 2012, when Doug Muchler, he is provoked by the fact that there is this Chinese underground nuclear test and that it was large, and he hears that the seismologists already know that it is outlining something pyramidal in shape underground. It turned out one night, this goes back probably in 2013, I was working in my office late, and I got a call from a man who introduced himself and said, I can't go on the record with you, but I want you to know that on May 21st in 1994, wasn't it, that I was in a team in which we have recordings of the pyramid, the Black Pyramid underneath, that was revealed by that Chinese underground test.
Wow. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. And so I will leave it at that. Please go continue watching Earth Files show from last night. Again, the link is in the live chat. I've also put it in the description of the video. It is Earth Files, all one word, EARTHFILES. And go listen to more of the content from Miss Linda Moulton Howe, from Mrs. Linda Moulton Howe. So yeah, there is so much. I know I've not been online lately. I've been dealing with a lot of other things, but I've got a lot of content that we need to talk about. Now, as I bring this to a close, there's something that we're going to be talking about probably in the next few video streams regarding mantid insectoids and their genetic engineering, and what, we'll discuss what their potential true origin is, their presence on Earth, which seems to be quite ancient and even predates human species. They have a large number of bases and colonies here on this Earth underground, and they possess an extremely advanced technology, including anti-gravity, teleportation, space-time manipulation, telepathy, and psychic abilities. These beings have been involved in abductions and secret agreements with governments. Probably the most scariest part of that is these beings are a predatory hive mind species and consider humans to be their property. So we will be discussing that over the next coming days. And so I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel so that you can get all of the notifications. I will be scheduling these broadcasts in advance. Okay. And we'll take it from there, right? We will take it from there. I appreciate each and every one of you for coming through. I will be live maybe later on tonight, but do be looking for me this weekend here on the LeakYou.com platform, as well as on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Amazon Music. Before I get up out of here, allow me to pay a few bills, if you don't mind. Shout out to the LeakYou community. Please join us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Amazon Music.
Please hit the like. Thank you.
Now, listen, if you have had an experience or if you have any information around all of these topics, whether it's non-terrestrial beings, extraterrestrial beings, non-biologics, biologics, if that includes beings that are AI even, if you've had any experiences or you have knowledge that you would like to share, even in an anonymous fashion, please reach out to me, LeakYou at LeakYou.com. I appreciate again everybody that came through. Much love to each and every one of you. All right. And if you like my work, please donate. It isn't cheap to do this. Okay. You can hit me on Cash App at LeakYou, or you can PayPal me at LeakYou. All donations are poured right back into the platform, as you can tell. And also, please come and follow our Discord. You can reach us at discord.gg/LeakYou. Again, I appreciate each and every one of you, and I will see you all very, very, very soon. Until next time, everyone.
The judgment sentence that you are an asshole. The trial is over. Thank you, everybody.
Let's play a game. You have 10 seconds to take all your stuff and get out of my life. 10, 9, 8.
God bless you, motherfucker.
You're really smart. Like really, really, really smart like I am.